My name's Kat Tames. I'm Delegate Helmer's Chief of Staff. Been part of his team since 2021. I've been really fortunate to be part of the team. Dan sends his request that he can't be here this evening. He's got two young boys trying to get through the end of the year in high school, Karen finishing. And so, yeah, I just wanted to join you guys for a conversation to see what your priorities were, what your interests were, share some of the accomplishments that we had in Richmond this session, looking ahead to next year. So yeah, I think that's a great place to start. Some of our legislative priorities that we've accomplished. We were able to pass the piece of legislation that we passed this year, had to do with closing an exemption with VMI, legislation that we started in 2020 after we won, that mandates that schools cannot, when students report their sexual assaults on campus, that they can't face repercussions for those reports, such as punitive actions, being forced to undergo certain types of trainings and whatnot. So VMI had an exemption. So the legislation that was passed this year focused on closing that exemption that VMI had through a carve out. So the things that were a priority. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you just briefly, just so you know who all we are? We're just going to walk our way down.
Oh, perfect.
Down the table. We'll tell you who we are, what position we have with the organization, what community we represent.
Great. Yeah.
So my name is Jeff Barnes. I'm the president of the Sully District Council. I represent the Highlands community.
Great.
And I'm Louis Grimm. I'm the vice president of Sully District Council and representing the Franklin Farm community.
I'm Stephen Schulich. I'm president of the Western Fairfax County Citizens Association. I'm also semi-representing the Virginia Chase Association. I was a member of the group that went down to Richmond the early spring.
Okay.
To try to oppose all these data centers.
Great.
Going in. So that is certainly a priority. You know, you also, I guess, you're well aware of the parking issue and the Z-mod.
Yeah.
So.
I'm Jay Johnson. I'm the president of Sully District Council, representing Virginia.
Great.
Jim Neighbors, secretary of the Citizens Council, and I represent Sully Station.
I'm James McCarran. I represent Braddock Ridge Homeowners Association.
Great. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you for those introductions.
So here we go.
Oh, yeah. So we, that's what we were able to do this year. We're looking, right now, we've already started our legislative outreach and research. Right now there's obviously campaigns going on. We're really focused. Dan and I are looking into, I know workforce development has been an issue, especially post-pandemic, continues to be an issue for a lot of folks, industries that we're hearing from. So that's one thing that we're looking into. We have passed legislation during the 2022 legislative session that we were really proud of, that some of the first in the country on hospital price transparency. So that law actually goes into effect July 1 of this year. So any service that you would go get, like a non-emergent service, scheduling like a colonoscopy or anything like that, the hospital has to share that price with you, the negotiated rates. Or obviously healthcare is skyrocketing. We've heard a lot from constituents, people around the state and the country. And we know that people who are deferring care based, they're terrified of an inflated bill coming in. So we want people to not have to defer that life-saving care. And we've done a lot on gun violence prevention, which continues to be an issue. So we're hopeful in the majority next year we'll be able to get some of that moved on. We've done different benefit expansions, really trying to aid the middle class folks who are going back to school, supporting them on getting off government benefits by expanding access while they're in schools. They can get their degrees completion to hope for some autonomy after that. So yeah, I'm open to questions if you guys have any priorities that you'd like to share. And obviously if I can't answer them, I'm going to share all these with Dan so we can make sure to follow up with you on them.
During the General Assembly, if I walked around the state capitol, what are the top 3 things that I would up at night? Yeah.
Do you mean members or people who are coming to?
What's going on in the state? I mean, what is like the top 3 or 4 things that are before, like the most discussion, the most challenging?
I definitely think one of the most challenging issues, right? I mean, we're hearing a lot that people, like hardworking Virginians cannot afford to live here. I hear it all the time when people call us about issues. I've heard we sponsored a study bill this year, for instance. We had a constituent reach out who was touring colleges with his daughter who was going off to college. And so one of the things that he had shared with us when they toured a college in Tennessee, for instance, he's a public school teacher. And he found out that Tennessee offers tuition discounts for public school teachers and their dependents to go to school. And when he says, when our office hears anything, and which we've been hearing frequently, that the cost of living is insane, and he's like, "Well, I probably would have moved to Tennessee 10 years ago if I had known about this, and I just would have moved a few hours over because it would have helped us afford college, it would have helped us afford these other things, and I wouldn't have been here." So I think is increasing healthcare. The cost of prescriptions is something that cost touches so much. We hear a lot about people who are getting degrees and they feel like they can't, find jobs. And those that we're hearing.
Is that more degree oriented?
I
Because
think
I can't believe engineers can't find jobs, doctors, nurses. The English major with a BA. Now, you never know. Like, is it more,
I think
my educated guess,
I think
it's more what
certainly.
major is.
So some of it can be major picks.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think some of it is also making sure that we're retaining folks in Virginia who aren't
Yeah.
just like, one, that we have students that are choosing to stay in Virginia for college,
Yeah.
And two, that they're choosing to stay in Virginia once they complete those degrees. Onto the workforce development, we've been working with a lot of the manufacturing industry. I mean, in Virginia, we currently have a gap of women in that career field where there's like, I think, the 2,800, 2,500 gap between the national average. Some of that's not degree oriented. That is making sure that that children in our schools know they have options, whether that's go enter an apprenticeship after this, should they choose not to go get a degree of anything. So we're facing major workforce challenges here. We hear that a lot, and I think that's definitely tied to the cost of living. Our office hears a lot about gun violence prevention. We've unfortunately felt that here in Virginia. We've had, multiple shootings here. People are scared to send their children to school. People are scared to walk into grocery stores. And so we hear a lot about that. We hear a lot about resiliency. When the next storm is going to come, what is the future of Virginia going to look like? And we hear a lot about transportation too. So I think those are challenges and I think we hear a lot about those for a number of reasons, because they're very difficult to look at, and the solutions have to come from a bipartisan standpoint, I think. But those are things they're multi-layered, right?
Multiple things.
But the cost of living is a major, and as it continues to increase, is one.
Is that more of a Northern Virginia problem? Because I tell you, go past 15 and you go from south of Fredericksburg. To me, that's kind of Northern Virginia line now.
And I guess I say cost of living. I mean, I think it's like the cost of being a Virginia. I mean, we're hearing it throughout the state.
Yeah.
Even if homes are cheaper in those other parts, prescriptions are still unaffordable for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Those are things that we hear. I mean, we've heard a lot about the healthcare and about the safety and whether or not people feel safe in their communities. So.
Okay.
And just follow up a little bit on that. Those are things that you're hearing from your constituents and other representatives, discussion with them. What kind of directives are you seeing coming down from the office of the governor to say, well, here are the things that I want to do, my 2 or 3 top items that might address some of these concerns that hopefully he's hearing from?
Yeah, look, we passed a lot of legislation this year. The governor didn't return a lot of vetoes, so clearly we found some areas to do that. I don't know that I have those explicit directives from the governor, but I'd be happy to reach out and get those and share them with you all. Our office has not been able to work one-on-one with the governor on specific, and not for any, we just haven't been able. I mean, he's signed our bills. I mean, he signed a few of our bills. So,
Right, and I
A
guess,
lot of yeses.
yeah, and
Mhm.
A lot of yeses.
yeah, but which is always a challenge because if they're on a one-to-one basis, yeah, you may not have those connections, but, most governors, I think, try to say, well, here's what I'd like to see for the state of X, the state of Y, the state of Z. And then that's what I would like the state legislature to try to focus on. Now, what the individual bills look like are gonna be different.
Yeah,
Is it one side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle? Might be the same issue, but looked at very, very differently. That's okay. That's
Yeah.
part of the political process.
yeah. I don't know that I can speak to what his priorities are. I mean, I think some of it is clear what's coming out of his office. I think, education has been a point for him. Public education, we support broadly public education. So, but I'm happy to look into that. I think get that back.
Did the governor do any spike vetoes last year where they jointly sponsored bills, one from a Republican, one from a Democrat? I know the governor had vetoed the Democratic one, and the Republican go through. I mean, there was no virtual difference between the two. Has he been better trained this year?
So I know I think we recently returned some others. I think this year back when we were back for the veto session, he had vetoed 3 bills. One of the bills we actually did not support. So we were aligned on that. That was a bill that Delegate Helmer voted against, which would allow utility companies like Comcast to keep their utility trucks, like Comcast trucks, parked on your property for up to 72 hours. We didn't support that, so the governor vetoed that. I don't think Dan believes that Comcast should have their truck parked on your property for that period of time. But so yeah, I mean, we saw a significant drop in the vetoes from the 2022 session.
Is he playing better, or is it still as partisan as he was?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know that I'm able to exactly answer that. I mean, like I said, we were able to get one bill out of the House and Senate unanimously this year. And the governor did sign that, which we were happy that he did. I'm not sure what pressure either way that he faced. So then we were happy to see him, I think we passed, with a majority back in the House, hopefully this coming 2023 session, I'm hopeful that we can pass more legislation that we can send to the governor's desk. That's a lot more aligned with us.
When you're talking about jobs and stuff, I'm a geographer from Shenandoah Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at most of the high-end jobs are in North Virginia, maybe the Norfolk area. It's really focused. You got 88 counties in this. It's 80, over 80 counties.
Yeah.
And probably 20 of them are generating most of the revenue going to Richmond, where the other counties are probably negative. They're probably not even generating enough revenue for the roads and stuff. You guys are sending money from us down to them.
Sure.
But I go up and down the Shenandoah Valley all the time. From Winchester to Radford, there's a Walmart on College almost every exit. I mean, it's incredible having colleges, but the students don't stay down. Most of them don't. I mean, I grew up, I can't understand this.
Yeah.
But there's no startup. I mean, at least my observations, unless you take Virginia Tech and maybe a few other places, I don't see any startups. I don't see some of these industries incentivized to move into the Shenandoah Valley and build an upper income class.
Charlottesville.
Yeah, Charlottesville, I'm thinking 81.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the
Yeah,
whole from
right.
literally Winchester to Radford,
Mhm.
except for Blacksburg. They got a lot of tech companies around here because of Virginia Tech. It's just a shame, I go down there, it's all service jobs. I mean, my family's, it's all,
Yeah.
middle income. And then you have the doctors, the lawyers, and the teachers, you got like an upper income and you
Yeah.
got middle class. And you're talking about medical costs. It's just a shame that we don't. I don't know about tax credits, give them free land to build a startup,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is. I mean, even 100, 200 IT people down there giving higher incomes. And then they influence the school system.
Yeah.
They start demanding more in the school system because they want AP classes for their kids and art classes.
Yeah.
And I just see such a contrast in state.
Yeah.
Looking at economic geography, the Shenandoah Valley's.
Well, on that topic, so I see, the governor has accepted $35 billion from Amazon for data centers. Where, know where those are supposed to go?
I do not know where they're supposed to go, but I can find that. I can try to get that information to you.
Yeah, I mean, that would certainly be something that would spread the wealth if they were to spread
Yeah.
County has a data center right there, Bradford.
Huh.
A huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Satellite,
it's,
somebody's over.
I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, most of these data centers, yeah,
Aren't
I
that,
mean, there are 50 people.
right, but it would help.
Probably a community college, I mean, because they're network people,
Right. I mean,
they're not AI, they're not,
plus their tax advantage.
yeah.
I mean, I think one thing that is going to be really critically important to the state that we hope that the governor does. I mean, we've seen a lot of money come in. We've had one of the largest investments by President Biden with the IRA. And so there's a lot of money out there, I think, to support some of this. And how are we able to strategically, access that money, and implement it? I think for a lot of these projects, like when you want to talk about development, like broadband accessibility, we're working with the VCTA, which I think we saw huge, with COVID, we saw gaps in the digital divide and what students, in Northern Virginia, we have access to broadband, but when we had to go remote, when our students had to go remote, do those students in that area have access to, capabilities that allow them to stay tuned in? So.
And that's one of the things too, where I think I'm an engineer myself. I'm still on publication related to that. But I think a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, these national broadband expansion programs are the 2020 equivalent of what was done back in the 1930s with rural basic electrification.
Yeah.
Because something like 35–40% of the entire country in the early 30s did not have electricity.
Yeah.
And now, well, everybody does. And it'd be great in some places, but everybody's got to flip a switch, the light will typically come on. And I think that if you look at Virginia, that was clearly the situation through Southwest Virginia. Now, another point in the Shenandoah Valley, you got the hub at Roanoke.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things going on there. In fact, my niece and her husband are both on faculty at Roanoke University.
Yeah.
And so you've got a couple of clusters.
The clusters, yeah.
A lot of it is based on colleges. Those colleges tend to attract people with a little bit more income, looking for a little bit more diverse services, whatever it might be. And they can be kind of incubators for growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I think to the point of, development one with like the infrastructure, whether that's the road infrastructure, that's that. I mean, I think that the money that we're going to see, and I know that other states who are in similar positions as Virginia, whether that's geographically, whether that's politically, and I know that I've been working closely, speaking especially with our environmental partners like the LCV, how are other states accessing this money and implementing it? I think it's going to be vital to Virginia in the next year, in the next 5, but particularly this next year, to see how we're able to do those really key investments to build up those areas.
Yeah, I just look at I mean, he brings up a good point. Walmart college data center every X. I mean, you just spread it and then it creates, like you said, incubators.
Yeah.
That 50 techs influence the local economy.
Yeah.
Instead, we don't need 50 techs. We need some of the IT people in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're patrolling over each other.
Yeah.
Maybe we could put a couple of bus loads and ship them out.
Yes.
Sure we could.
Yeah.
Another, I thought, noteworthy, event, I guess, was the governor mentioning objecting to the battery. That was down near Blacksburg or Roanoke?
Are you referring to the Ford plant?
It wasn't, no, it was down, No, I think it was a Chinese company that was going.
Building batteries for electrical vehicles.
Yes,
Well, guess what? Every electrical vehicle needs to have those kind of batteries,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know, and you look at that and say, well, all right, it may not be a company that we really want to work with, but if somebody's willing to put that level of financial investment into my state, where I get all the revenues coming in, county gets revenues,
And people get jobs.
and people get jobs,
Yeah,
I'm not going to complain too much unless some people who I'm looking at, will you support me if I want to run for higher office, are saying, oh, no, you can't do that.
yeah. I can't speak to any of that. I can say we desperately need more jobs here in Virginia. And if, you know, our priority is keeping jobs in Virginia and not losing them to other states, like,
Good source.
like Michigan. So
So talk to me about the Ford plant.
my understanding is earlier this year, and I don't know if it's the same thing, but I'm pretty sure it was a Ford plant or a car plant, that was originally going to be here in Virginia. Something happened, and those 700 some odd jobs ended up going to Michigan instead
Yes.
of here.
It's the same thing. Right?
Yeah, and I can't remember, I don't know if it was for Ford or what it was. I know it had something to do with cars, but I mean, we have 700 Virginians who are ready for work and who
Yeah.
would have benefited from this. Yeah,
Lego, was it near Richmond? Lego.
I know there was some stuff with the Lego plant. I'm not 100% certain on those, on like the smaller details, so I can't speak to those, but, yeah, I mean, keeping jobs here in Virginia is a priority, especially jobs that help people get in the middle class and maintain the middle class, and where they can support their families. So,
Dan and I talked when he was representing Virginia,
mhm.
so he's no longer representing us. Has he done any kind of transition with the prospective new representative for our area, not just Virginia, but for our area?
Yes.
Area that he lost.
So we're,
Which one is that? Do you know, is that?
No,
do you know what number district you're in?
I thought it was 10.
So we're still,
That's
we're-
progression.
we're 10, we're HD 10. So just for clarity, also, we still represent HD 40 until we switch over in January. And I know, right,
Whatever we lost, I mean, all of a sudden, Dan is no longer our representative in Richmond. It's gonna be whoever this new person is. Okay.
so you should have a pretty good idea of who it'll be. I know, Delegate Carrie Delaney took a lot of our precincts, so I don't know if you want to type your address in, we can look it up now, but we have.
Virginia Run, almost all of Virginia Run is outside Dan's purview, somebody else. And I don't think we know who it's gonna be.
There are 3 delegates in Sully after the redistricting. Irene, Harry, and Dan.
Yeah.
So Irene is to the north and Dan is to the south. So you're in the middle, so you must be Harry.
All right.
Harry Delaney used to represent Chantilly, Fairfax, and Portishead.
Yep. And all our districts kind of bumped together, but we work very closely with Delegate Shin's office and Delegate Delaney's office. I know that we've worked on lots of things, and so we're actually, as staff, we're in pretty close communication typically always, especially things that one affect multiple areas. So yeah, we've already started, and I think issues that we've had a long-standing issue with Bull Run Post Office Road is a good example. So anyway, I've been in contact with Delegate Delaney's office. I think we're hoping to have that resolved this year. But yeah, August, I think.
I've been on
Yeah.
that email string with
Yep.
Jim Hart and everybody,
Yep.
Dan and people over here. And
Yep.
try to get that resolved. It's silly.
And I think August is what we're looking at
Okay.
for that, was my understanding, is when the final vote will be taken and everything should be
Okay.
my last update.
It's a final action by the Commonwealth Transportation Board.
Yep,
So that's
CTV.
Step 1. Then step 2, you put up signs.
Yep,
And step 3, you enforce the signs.
yep,
And that may be the most challenging part of it.
yeah,
Well, the biggest threat, I think, has been overcome because we're no longer hauling all that soil over to That's true, the quarry, that's a little bit, huh? Oh, they're not done, by no means done. It's just that they were hauling all
Maybe
that,
another 10 years.
all that haul, it took them 100 years to empty it, take it that long to fill it.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
so they're just,
Yeah.
you finally convinced.
The source of material for them has
Has-
dissolved, and now I gotta find new sources,
Oh, I see.
But,
because it all came out of 66, most of it.
but I mean, we've worked with PwC and Loudoun County on,
Yeah, yeah.
on those. So, but I mean, I think that's a really good example of where Delegate Delaney doesn't have that portion of the district currently, but will. And so we've been working very closely with her office to keep them abreast of all of the ongoings and the
Yeah.
changes, and it's a complex, long issue. So their office is, her aide is, her name is Jackie Gary, and Jackie and I,
Okay.
which I think is one benefit here in Nova. A lot of the staff and members are like geographically close, but we work together very well in Richmond. The offices, we all typically try to keep aware of what's going on, especially when lines are so close.
Right.
Hello. Hi, Delegate Shin.
I'm sorry I'm late.
All right, no problem.
I'm very glad to be here with you all.
Thank you.
Hello. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I just have more questions for you.
Yeah, great.
So don't go away.
No. Sure.
What weren't you invited to that everybody else has been invited to?
Ooh, I don't know. What's going on tonight?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Dan had family stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I only asked that question because everybody else. Yes, to send them somebody in their stead.
Oh.
You're here with us and we
Yeah.
thank you for that. So,
Very glad to be here. There's always like one bajillion activities happening at any given time.
Yeah.
So, and for me, I was down in Richmond today doing my day job and then just got back here. I'm glad I made it.
That's actually.
we are glad you.
That
we're
long.
glad you're here.
Yeah. No, very excited. No, we're happy. We're happy to be here. Like I said, Dan sends his regrets that he can't finish out the school year.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
totally. There's one more question for Kat before I.
Why, I got quite.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. I'm gonna sit and listen.
And Dan and I talked probably an hour on my doorstep.
great.
He's a veteran, as am I,
Mhm.
and we talked about a lot of veteran issues.
Yeah.
And there's a significant veteran issue that I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
And it's also related to seniors in this area.
Mm-hmm.
There's a homestead act. A lot of other states have inaugurated and used. I think that is something significantly important for this state, more importantly for Northern Virginia, because of the number of retirees that we have in this area. If you look at any one thing that forces retirees away from this area, it's the cost of living. But more importantly, the cost of home buying, the cost of taxes, the cost of everything else that goes on in this area. I have seen tens, 20, 30, 40 of my friends say, I'm done with Northern Virginia. It's too expensive to live here. Our taxes in Sully alone went up by 25% in the last 2 years. I was overseas this last week, and I mentioned to our tour guide the amount of taxes I pay on my house and the amount of insurance that I have to pay on my house. He was astonished. He says, that's the cost of homes.
But don't forget, in Europe, everything you buy, you're paying through a value added tax.
Understand? I know
And
that.
so it's invisible, but it's always there.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, they're dealing with their minimum wage is €2.50.
Mm-hmm.
That's their minimum wage. Average. The average wage for a lot of people, I've talked to a bartender, his wage was €40.50 an hour. How do they live on stuff like that? Don't ask me. He doesn't have a car. That's one of the, do you have a car? No, can't afford it. The point is,
Yeah.
people are leaving Virginia because of the taxes. And Fairfax County is the worst of them all. We heard the budget folks here a couple of months ago talking about a $3 billion budget for the schools in Fairfax County. $6 billion to run the school systems in this county. That's outrageous. Why? Why does it cost that much to run the school system? Why are we not looking at measures to reduce the cost of things in this area? I don't understand it. They raised our car taxes. Are they gonna lower the car taxes?
I think,
Nobody can tell us.
I thought the car taxes, because the cars are appreciated, not depreciated.
Right, well, yeah,
Because of the crazy, like, COVID stuff.
I got that, but are we gonna see that decrease this year? I don't think so.
I mean, if car prices going down, I think they are.
New car prices aren't going down, as are used.
Did you see this article on
I don't think the rate changed. Right?
Saturday?
I think it's
No,
It's just-
Saturday's New York Times had an article, coastal cities priced out low-wage workers. Now college graduates are leaving too. So many of the cities on both the east and west coast are losing first lower wage people. Now the college graduates are trying to locate to interior cities, south, or what we used to call Rust Belt cities, where the cost of living is still milder than it is in the east coast.
So, COVID has caused a huge shift in where people live. You're right, for East Coast, West Coast, all of a sudden, everybody moves to places other than that because they don't have to be sitting at a desk, in their
Yeah.
offices.
Yeah, yeah. I think the remote transition to remote work in the during the pandemic has really impacted folks during the.
I mean, what is current, and we talked about transportation engineers. If all I hear is about remote work, then why is traffic balance 66 and everybody's remote working? I mean, like why
Well,
is?
a lot of government firms, you know that.
Yeah, but
They're required.
No, but USDA's
Well,
3
there
days
are-
a week. I mean, tell them.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's a combination of things. I'd say. You've got every agency,
Right.
everybody says, okay, we have a expanded telework policy. But very, very few people are like 100% telework.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably a pretty good example. The situation in federal highways is, well, we want everybody to be no more than 50% teleworking any given week. In any given 2-week period. And someone like me, I'm a team leader, say, okay, well, I'll be there 3 days a week in the building. And 2 days a week, I'll be teleworking. And other people are scattered out across that. But it varies kind of office by office, place by place. I know some other parts of the country, people are saying, well, we don't really have to be here, so we'll maybe have one person or 2 people from the whole group in the office, state office, state FHWA office out of like 15 to 20 people any given day. So it's got a lot of people are in there maybe one day every 2 weeks.
And
But they're still getting things done.
one thing you're probably forgetting is before COVID, the government workers weren't putting in 5 days a week, they were working 4 days. So they've only gone down 1 day.
I mean, I work for federal government.
Yeah,
Yes,
9-day schedule?
4-2-4-10s.
Yeah.
But people that have soccer games in the afternoon,
Sure.
I mean, you're talking from 6 a.m. to 4,
Yeah.
4 days. And they can't do it because they gotta be like at the bus stop at 3:30, unless they get in like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Right.
And most of them are not wanting to
Yeah,
do that.
but-
So, yeah, there is a percentage that does a 4-10 schedule. It's not high.
Yeah, but
I wouldn't say it's 75%.
Yeah, but I think the idea with the increased transportation, a lot of people, I think one reason you're seeing a lot more people on 66 on the roads is the transit ridership has been really going down. Now it's recovered on a lot of bus systems around the country. Still on its way back, still a long way to go for any to fix the Skyway rail system. But for saying, I don't want to be stuck on a metro rail car that carries nominally 100 people, and there's 150 people in the car. Don't want that. And if I don't have to, I won't. So it's kind of that shift. A lot of people say, well, I didn't want to drive, but I will, given the other choices. And I'll rearrange my schedule, so maybe I do it 2 days a week instead of 5 days.
I just hear different stats and from Richmond. Do you guys have any statistic right now of how many people are teleworking versus before the pandemic? It was like 5% or 10% before the pandemic. It's 40% now. I hear like, oh, everybody's teleworking. Like, I mean.
But yet the buildings are empty. A lot of buildings are empty.
Yeah, I haven't heard a statistic of like that. We don't have a statistic measuring that in Richmond, but we do hear a lot about vacant buildings, and that's
So,
obviously.
I mean, like Fairfax County Economic Development, whatever they
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
Yeah, do they have a stat that 50% of the buildings, the commercial buildings in Fairfax County are vacant?
I think that.
The occupancy is below like 50%.
Yeah, they do have a statistic about vacancy and,
Yeah.
like the number of buildings that haven't been reoccupied since the
Right.
pandemic, and it's pretty high. I couldn't remember exactly the statistic, but I'm happy to do follow-up with you all to provide that information.
Yeah, just,
But it's still a mystery, because like, there are still a ton of cars on the road, but like, they're not in their office.
yeah, but I mean, they're going to Walmart.
Yeah,
I mean, but 6 AM, why are they going to Walmart, you know? 6 AM, there's a lot of cars on the road.
Yeah.
You get a lot of parents taking their children to school.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of kids.
Yeah, I mean,
I see a 40 passenger bus come down my road every morning, and at most there's 4 kids on that bus. At most.
yeah,
Yep. And two reasons for that. One, is a lot of parents taking their kids to school. And I see that in my neighborhood all the time. They're transporting the kids from their house, basically 3 or 4 blocks over to the bus stop. And I say, seriously? Come on, people.
they can't walk.
It must not, well, they're gonna be huge.
Yeah,
But you look at that, and I say, okay, well, but still, you're paying through, that's one of the costs of the school system.
Big
You know,
buses.
they have to pay so that every student within the defined area eligible for transport by bus has a seat guaranteed.
yeah, I mean, Westfield technically doesn't have walkers.
Yeah,
Because they're building a business park because of safety,
And near those
you know.
two grade schools.
Yeah,
Your grade schools.
yeah, Cub Run, walk, Stone Middle, but it's higher education. And for full disclosure, my daughter graduated from Westfield. She's a VC, a mechanical engineering major. She graduated last year. UVA, JMU, Tech, William Mary, freaking record number of applicants. You have students above a 4.0
Mhm.
that are not getting in those schools in Virginia.
It's
But
like
then-
they take more money.
Well, I mean,
multiple.
but UNC is 10% of it.
You know, I was actually
Yeah.
speaking with GMU's government affairs person, and GMU is gonna have, I think, one of the largest increase. They're trying to increase their Virginia admissions every year. Last I spoke to them, and so I think they're one of the universities in the state, and it's right here in Virginia, that are opening up, that are increasing
Yeah.
their Virginia admittance. And I think that goes back to a lot of what we were saying, is keeping Virginia students here
Yeah.
for college, and then hopefully here post.
At the higher
And,
education.
and there's also,
We are just so fortunate to stay.
We really are.
something I've heard too, I had heard about some years ago, was that some of the schools in the state, University of Virginia, Virginia Tech specifically, had established total enrollment caps that they did not want to exceed. Whereas George Mason says, yeah, we'll keep growing. Virginia Commonwealth says, yeah, we'll keep growing. And you look at that and say, wait a minute, so you're saying the two potentially premier institutions in the country, or the state anyway, are saying they're not going to go above X thousand students on campus? There are a few other places that have done that around the country, but usually they're a member of the Ivy League, which are putting restrictions on for a variety of reasons. But others say, well, yeah, we'll keep growing. I mean, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill keeps growing. Maybe not as fast as they might like it to, but it keeps growing. University of Michigan keeps growing, Ohio State, Texas, I can go on and on. Yet at my institution, I went to West Virginia, I said, okay, well, they've seen a decline because they don't have as much of a market within the state. And the cost differentials are such that they're not getting as many out-of-state students as they once did, and the differentials are small.
Yeah, my understanding, those universities are getting record numbers. We have George Mason, VCU, Longwood, CNU, Mary Washington. The numbers are dropping, the enrollment number. I heard Bradford took a major, this year. It's just interesting. You got these 4 universities that, I mean, kids are almost climbing on top of each other by there with like 4.5 GPAs and like 15 AP classes. And then you got VCU and George Mason, like they're losing like number of enrollment. It's just interesting contrast. Now, part of it, when they took the SAT scores away, I know GMU, they went this Common App, they got some 40% rise, because everybody jumped at the wagon once they took the SAT scores away. I heard that's not. I've been told we're, counselors are telling parents, don't assume that's been state funded.
Mm.
You know, that will take the SAT scores away, and they're like, oh, don't worry about SAT scores. No.
Well, you also have to consider their maintenance, how the schools compare.
Yeah, I just, it's pretty interesting contracts.
Yeah.
So I just encourage you to think about this.
Yeah.
Whether it's caps or something else.
Another area I want to talk about guns.
Mhm.
We're so concerned about shootings. I mean, we just had voting, today was the anniversary for that. The president was almost in tears talking about it. This is a state issue and a federal issue, but I'm more concerned about state issue. We have no gun control in the state as far as I'm concerned. This is one state where you can cross into the state and buy a gun at leisure. You go right up here to the Dulles Expo, go in there, and there are tens of thousands of people in there all playing around with guns, and we have no control. AR-15, I'm a military, the AR, the A6, the M16 is the rifle that we use in the military. The AR-15, the exact same thing, except it's not on automatic. If you get a bump stop, fix that problem. So now you have civilians running around with a military rifle. Why?
It's a great.
They had this discussion again overseas. They say, why do you have such problems with guns in the United States? I says, what do you think there's a reason? Because we have no controls. Nobody wants to put controls. You have a state like Virginia that's not willing to put controls on guns. We're lucky, very lucky, we haven't had a major problem.
Oh, I disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ted.
Not to-
Walmart, the 6-year-old who just took a gun to Newport News, like, I mean, I would say that we are not eventless or incidentless.
Well, I forgot about those. The 6-year-old kid, tragic, absolutely tragic. I wouldn't consider that mass casualty. I'm talking about a mass casualty event. Where
Virginia-
10s, 20s, well, yeah, okay. I forgot.
Walmart right before the 6-year-old too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're just lucky.
I mean,
But why don't we, in this state, put major controls on guns? I don't get it.
And here's a point that really addresses that directly. You know, there are so many people in that political spectrum. We say, oh, I'm an originalist. I only want to follow what the Constitution says. And I say, all right, if that's truly what you believe, please read the entire Second Amendment.
Right.
First thing it says is for the maintenance of a well-regulated militia. Do we still have a militia
Yes.
in Virginia?
Yes, we do.
It's the only one on that.
But
Actually,
But
and the
that's,
state actually does have.
well, but I think if you're gonna say that, say, okay, that's what it was for. That's what the founding fathers wrote that amendment for. So they said, we experienced a situation 20 years before that, when the British, then occupying government, said, no, we're not gonna let you people keep your guns because you might oppose us.
Sure.
And they said, well, we're not gonna let that happen again. Made sense when the weapon of choice, actually the only weapon of availability, was a single shot muzzle loading rifle or musket.
And everybody should have the right to buy one.
I mean,
It's done.
if you don't, you
At
know,
the Dulles Expo? I'm not sure about that. I think we should.
No, I'm talking about.
A single shot musket.
I want to buy a musket, I think.
Nothing else.
I mean, if you did, if you've seen surveys of where most of the weapons in a state, I mean, we assume it's the expert center, but every other report.
Oh, yeah.
But compared to the rest of the state, like down the Shenandoah Valley, where a lot of people are armed. And some of it's for hunting, but,
Sure.
you know, self-protection.
But there are certain types of weapons that are for hunting. An AR-15 is not a hunting. And I had a guy tell me, I use it for a bear. I said, okay, let me ask you something.
Shoot bears.
Can you shoot bear?
Yeah,
Cut-
how many
cut it-
bears?
Shoot.
Well, but that's part of my question. The other question was, don't you have a 30-06? Don't you
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
303?
Yeah,
Those will kill a bear
yeah,
almost.
I fire bolt action rifle with that bit.
Right, so why do you need an AR-15?
Yeah.
Why do you need an automatic pistol? Why
You
do
don't.
you need 356 Magnum?
I'm on the same
Why
page.
do you need the 44s, 45s? I mean, there are all kinds of weapons out there that people have got. Got a whole locker full 15 rifles. Why do you need 15 rifles?
Yeah.
There's no control. We don't have red flag laws in the state.
Well, no,
We do?
we do have a red flag.
Yep. I was actually gonna tell you about all of the things that we did get to pass
Okay.
during the Democratic
Yeah,
majority
that's-
as it relates
I
to
think
gun.
What she has to say,
Yeah.
dangerous some of our questions.
Maybe, yeah, because I think that the claim that we haven't done anything on guns is false. We haven't done enough yet on guns, but we have done some stuff when the Democrats had a majority in 2021 and 2022. Is that right? 2020 and 2021. Those 2 years, those 2
Okay.
seconds. Red flag laws was one of the first things that we
All
did.
right.
The second thing was we tried to ban assault rifles in the state, and we lost that because of Chap Peterson in the Senate.
Right.
Senator Chap Peterson, a Democrat,
A Democrat.
single-handedly tanked that. So remember that. But we're gonna come back for it if we have a majority.
Why do we have to?
Because Republicans refuse to even negotiate in good faith.
I mean,
That's the point.
I agree.
That's the point. Republicans
Yeah.
want, Republicans
I
want.
agree. And like, that's a them problem, right? Like, because they are unwilling to even have a conversation about this. The third thing we got done was, we closed the background loophole. So everyone has to have a background check if you are purchasing a gun legally. It did not extend necessarily to the Dulles Expo Center, and it also does not include private sales. And actually, we did try to put in, and we did pass a law that would have limited the purchase of a handgun through a private sale and private transaction for folks under 21. And the fifth or the fourth circuit court just overruled that law and said that it's actually legal for private sale transactions to happen for under 21-year-olds. So there's a lot that's happening. We also passed laws that allowed ordinances in localities. So localities could say, hey, guns are not allowed in libraries, in our community centers, in our city halls, in our courts. Well, courts were always that way, but localities now have that authority because we're a bill and rule state, and so we had to grant authority. But what that does is it creates a problem of patchwork laws. So you're coming in and out of a place like you're driving down 81 and you're going through Warrenton, you're coming into Fairfax County and you're going in and out of being in violation of a law, right? And so when we have a Democratic majority, I'd like to see a place where like we have the backbone to actually pass laws that are universal across the Commonwealth so that we're not putting people in and out of violation.
My fear is we'll have open carry.
Yes, that I am afraid of that as also. I am afraid of that also. But the other thing to think about is like the federal regulations, because we don't currently regulate interstate commerce or interstate travel with firearms. So you're having a problem like in Detroit or Chicago, where people are buying their firearms in Indianapolis or Indiana, and they're traveling across state lines and they're bringing guns into Illinois where they have really strict gun regulations. And so until you have a federal authority to be able to regulate who's buying firearms, where they're carrying it into, what kind of firearms are even firearms are even visible to be purchased on the market, you can just basically like more proactive.
Gun for these things.
Yeah, more. Virginia is sure. North Carolina, West Virginia.
Gun for these things.
Often we have more lax laws.
So,
Correct.
okay, that's what I was-
Yeah. Yeah,
With the sort of gun.
sure, but like West Virginia, North Carolina.
It's true.
What action do we take to encourage and you'll be and enforce that you're showing up in here. Schools we carry.
State level.
Saying it'll be mandatory armed forces.
No, the state mandates like that because so much of the school funding is calculated by the localities. And so a locality has to be able to allocate. We don't have, that's actually a good idea.
Yeah, but let the state pay for that. If the state makes a requirement that every school has a full-time armed officer for security, Commonwealth of Virginia, at the state level, comes up with the money,
Yeah.
and then they said, okay, Salem City, here's your money,
Sure.
you know. Giles County, here's your money.
Yeah. It feels to me like that's still solving a symptom of the product of the issue, right? Which is,
But it's been,
Sufficient.
yeah.
maybe, not, that's an easy thing to figure out.
But thinking about what it means to put police presence, like armed police presence, especially in communities of color,
Maybe not,
disproportionately impact
figure out.
the rate of police being penalized in ways that they might not have. That shows people on campuses being penalized in ways that they might not have otherwise been.
Those situations,
But also in ways that they might.
it's truly someone from that local police force and police officer.
That would be the ideal. The local law enforcement.
Wouldn't necessarily agree with that. You saw that with the 6 or 7 black officers just beat the living crap out of that.
That's true.
I forget where it was, you know.
Minneapolis,
There,
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
George Floyd.
And it also happened to in Baltimore. Freddie Gray was also.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the school resource officer, I think a lot of schools already have school resource officers. It's certainly in state code, that we allow localities. SRO. Yeah, so we allow for localities if they have the funding to work.
Yeah.
The counties, the school districts are able to work. With their local. Resources to assign us.
The Virginia Tech shooting and
Yeah.
Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
I noticed that. Sandy Hook.
After Sandy Hook, a lot of things.
Yeah.
I-
I would agree.
Like-
I would agree.
Like,
Does that apply? Does that apply statewide, or is it just in Rockwood County?
It's Rockland County, so-
They watch. I mean, they're not messing around. I know watch. I mean, they're not messing around. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. I don't know if there's RSO at them,
Yeah.
you know, at the high school. They may not, I mean, they may have. I'm sorry.
There's still a lot of work to do.
I'm sorry. You were-
I think that some of the stuff that we're trying at the state level is futile until the feds get their act together to, because we can only do so much. But certainly to say that we are to, we can only do much. to say that we were going to continue to do that. The kind of things that we're going to continue to do post this action now conceal whatever it is and provide it kind of stuff that we're seeing is really anything. The conversation, whatever it is, and so the kind of stuff that we're seeing is really anything. The conversation about this and the gentleman that I'm sitting next in front of, and we had this conversation across a desk like this, and he's a military veteran also, and he said, I believe everybody should be able to have a gun. No bars held. I said, okay, well, like, why does someone need an assault rifle, whether it's semi-automatic or automatic? And also, we've banned bump stocks, by the way, as well as high-capacity magazines to modify any sort of firearm. We have banned that. And he says that, like, he really truly believes that everybody deserves to be able to have an assault rifle. He said he should be automatic and anyone should have it. And I said, why? For what cause? And he said, well, if I'm sitting on the floor of the house and someone comes and tries to shoot into us, I want to be able to stop that person. And these people. Right. But the point, I know, but the point is that these people really live in delusion where the idea is you're supposed to have a well-regulated militia to fight against tyranny. And the point that I learned from that conversation was that these folks, some of these folks, have really bought into the idea that we are living in the midst of like tyrannical government.
They create the situation.
Yes.
That's exactly what they're doing.
That's clear to you and to me.
Social media, it's a whole bunch of factors.
Sure, but they really.
Isolation theory.
Well, and actually, he's not well protected enough because he ought to have a bazooka and a tank weapon in case someone comes at him with
Well,
a.
where do you stop an AR-15 or do you go to a position? You
No.
go to a. Or no, you go to a tank. No, you go to
Yeah.
a.
100 years ago,
Stop.
they were smart enough in 1920. 100 years ago,
Stop. With an automatic.
they were smart enough in the 1920s.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, we just created a machine gun by giving an AR-15 with one. AR-15 with an automatic.
Except like
smart enough to change it. You've got 6. Oh,
except like federal authority. Yeah.
It's not because.
Instead of
There's always issues or something. Why? More action. Everybody say, oh, no, we can't. Yes. Do that. Kind of like this. It's not. That. It's not.
Yeah.
You say it's not a gun. The answer you're going to believe is when people have a crisis. And so, when we have a crisis, we have doctors, one, urging their practice, when we have I think we've done work on this well. The rest of
he doctor. You know, 72 hours, what happens when there's folks get out. I mean, that's also is that you know, people come in and care because he length of hours for probably Democrat. See the top at length that we're currently that their ideology. So there's a lot of that. 22 hours. It's not for folks. Just that's also like their own number of their patients. Where did that hit the process through their own emergency that's up to even like unwilling to move on this and on this.
What's the,
Unbelievable. That is certainly what we face.
what's this, what's the trend about this?
And
In more cases than ever. Also 40 or
geography because their biggest concern is actually use mental health services. They're available to this second pandemic, a huge long term impact. More resources. Versus 50 students are looking at there to be more resources on school campus because they incredibly high ratio is one foolishness. And it is that is important to lobby for more you know, to and so you know conversations with students come to Richmond a lot of pressure.
We have
They
mental illness.
Mhm.
What's the source of the mental illness? Do we classify? No, you're being
There are a lot of people in the United States, you know, there,
everybody has vitamins.
with the text.
Yeah.
everybody also.
I think it's one
What company, the employers are telling the companies, we're not gonna cover that because they're gonna raise their rates. You know, they cover $1,000, you know,
Yeah.
bill, so. Yeah, it's kind of a contrast.
What is gonna happen in the Commonwealth about abortion?
If Democrats retain the majority, nothing.
I mean, I looked at map this afternoon, this morning, and showed a lot of southern states, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, a lot of southern states, except for Virginia.
We're the last.
We're the only one. Yeah,
The
yeah.
only one that's holding out
We're
right
the
now,
last one that's-
the southern belt
Yep.
states, on abortion. We're white, which means nothing's been done.
Correct.
But I know that
Youngkin.
Youngkin.
Yeah.
Campaign on
He
abortion,
Said it, he said the other week.
education, he campaigned on a lot of different things, on gun control. And I don't see any movement.
Oh, I mean, that's not for lack of trying. This past session, we saw a number of bills introduced by the Republicans to limit abortion access. We saw one that was a complete ban. So they literally introduced legislation.
As far as before we're defeating it.
Yes, so far, because we have a Democratic majority.
I'm not pro-life,
Oh, no, totally,
and I don't want to put a label on things.
Sure.
I hate this label business,
sure.
but I'm not this way. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, the language that they introduced was actually determining that a fetus was a human. And therefore, you can't kill a human. And like, that was a language they're trying to introduce into our code. And so it would have been a complete ban. You couldn't get it, even the life, in the case of like jeopardizing the mother's life
Yeah.
or rape or incest, it was a complete ban. So that was introduced. There was another ban, there's like 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks, all sorts of numbers thrown out to see like what could stick. And they were all defeated ultimately. And so, yeah, yep, exactly. And I'll say that the Republicans, in spite of sometimes their own stupidity in this regard, I think they figured it out because that 0 week, that complete ban, they wouldn't even bring it to a hearing because they knew that if their members had to vote on it, they might lose in their district. And so it was introduced by Marie March, but they never let it even see the day of light.
okay. So for right now, it's going to stay as is, where there is no limit
Yep.
on the number of weeks.
Yep, it's like,
Abortion's
yep,
legal.
if your medical provider says it's safe, then like that's your decision.
So if you look at a election map in Virginia, how many districts are basically split? Like, is it,
Like 6 or 7. It's not that many. After the new redistricting process, the special mass, were you all paying attention to the redistricting process? It was a new commission. It was, yeah, the timeline was strong. So,
so that's how close the election can be.
yep,
It is, yeah. And I think the House, we're in a really good position to take back the majority. The Senate is in a good position to keep their majority, but it's close. It's not.
the seeds that'll come down to, one of the considerations and factors that the Supreme Court masters or special masters who drew the maps took into consideration was competitiveness of districts. So they did their best to keep the safe districts safe. And then where they were able to find competitive districts, they drew as really, truly competitive. So we're talking about anywhere between a
But then you
5
have
and 6 points.
demographic changes
Yep.
that could influence.
Sure, but those demographic changes won't take place until like 2029. We're talking about right now, and the maps were drawn in 2020 data.
It's like,
so it's pretty
I'm
reflective.
hearing
Yeah.
like people leaving Fairfax County going to Richmond.
Yeah,
And then 10,000,
Yeah.
it's not,
no,
three people are moving down to Richmond.
yeah.
So I mean, 2 or 3 years from now, then
Yeah,
some of those districts, I mean, it's like a moving target.
yeah.
So, okay.
I
I'm
agree.
just curious how close it's gonna be.
It will be pretty close. I think our numbers look good if we do everything right. I think Democrats should be in a good position to be able to take the majority. We're also on I like to think that we're on the morally right side of these issues.
Right.
Gun safety, economic issues.
I believe.
Yeah, and like democracy, right? Like there seems to be one party right now.
It's got a high percentage, the country, believe there should be some real true guidance on abortion,
Sure.
and we don't have it.
Sure, but that used to be Roe v. Wade, right? Roe v. Wade was the floor. And so like reinstating that as the standard, I think the majority of Americans feel comfortable with. We've had it as a precedent for 50 years, but Republicans won't let it lie at that, right? They want to go back to zero or complete ban.
They'll die on their sword there,
I certainly hope so.
hopefully in November.
Yeah, certainly.
All right. So any other hot issues that are at Richmond?
Hot issues in
I think we covered transportation, education, gun control,
abortion.
and social issues like abortion.
So,
Immigration.
Yeah, immigration.
We haven't talked.
what are they planning to do on Interstate 81? I know that previous governors had talked about tolling the highway.
They're not.
Yeah, they're not.
They ended up doing a diesel surcharge on diesel. And so they used that, the funds generated from that to do improvements on 81.
The only thing that
I know, but I mean, the tolls would have just been, yeah.
What,
I mean, given like most
They
people are
streamlined it?
middle income down there. I mean, again, it's a service industry.
I think it was tolls for,
But-
but yeah, I think it was for.
I have noticed in other states that they have converted highways and byways to federal interstate standard quality roads. If you go to North Carolina and check the map from 30 or 40 years ago, there are about 4 or 5 new interstates that are in that state.
Right.
If you check in our state, West Virginia, they've built Corridor H, US 48, interstate quality road. If you look at Pennsylvania, they have Interstate 99, which is completely out of number because they're built a new interstate highway. And you look at the state of Virginia, we don't have new highways, interstate quality highways. And we have a large population. There is transportation needs throughout it. And I'm amazed that we have not gotten some of that federal funding, because when you go to the interstate quality road, you get federal funding more than you would when you just upgrade a US highway.
That seems like a question for this
And
gentleman.
there is,
You actually do, and I mean, yeah, examples that Jeff was noting. I mean, some states have been much more aggressive in doing that. To say, well, here's our basic interstate system defined in the year 1954.
Mhm.
Mostly built. And they're saying, well, we still need more. We have gaps. In fact, that Corridor H that he mentioned is one of those gap routes, because that is part of the 13-state Appalachian Development Highway System. Covers the geographic area all the way from central New York down through all the Appalachian mountain areas, down to North Alabama, North Georgia. And because of that, there was a special pot of money for the development of the ADHS, defined and developed by one former U.S. Senator from West Virginia, Jennings Randolph. And then all the states benefited from that. All 13 of those states benefited from that. You can also add interstates. The Interstate 99 that he mentioned is basically a replacement for US Highway 220. It's a north-south route.
And 30.
And 30. And it was identified and proposed by Pennsylvania DOT, the federal highways, at the specific request of Congressman Schuster, sitting in his home in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is right along the route. At the time, he was chairman of the House Transportation Committee.
I see.
That's the way these things operate. I think you could look at any state, if you want, can make these requests. In fact, there's been a change the last couple of years for transportation. Which say, well, any member of Congress gets 3 to 5 projects. They're no longer called earmarks. It's congressional discretionary
Yep.
funding.
Yep.
You can use it for anything you want. Use it for highways, bridges, transit, whatever. And a lot of those congressmen, senators, said, okay, well, here's the route study or the design or the first phase of construction for project X, Y, or Z in my district. Because it benefits my constituents. It benefits trade, it benefits safety, go on and on. Interstate 81 is kind of a classic example, as are portions of Interstate 95. Nobody ever thought there'd be the level of usage of 81.
Sure.
That road now carries on average, most of its length, 50% of the total traffic are 18-wheeler trucks. Average volume is about 40 to 50,000 every section over there.
They hold so
That's like double what anybody projected.
They're avoiding the tolls of East 95, right?
They're avoiding part of it's that, but also because it's a better, quicker link to get down in their alliance for all.
that way. Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with toll facilities. We have new toll facilities here,
Yeah.
and guess what? They opened, they were full. People are willing to pay
Sure.
if they have insurance. I can get from point A to point B in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there would never have been construction of New Jersey Turnpike or Garden State Parkway and on and on.
Sure.
The other one I was, when you come up from Danville on Route 29,
Yep.
and you come up from Greensboro, North Carolina to Danville, the Route 29 corridor says future alignment of Interstate 785 or 985.
Yeah,
And
something
it's got
like
some
that.
signs saying
Right.
that this may be
Right.
an interstate quality road in the future,
Mhm.
but then it pans out in the state of Virginia. So, you know, it's as if North Carolina's taking all of the federal funds and Virginia's kind of just going,
Now that's something where you at the legislative level could kind of pose a question to the Secretary of Transportation and say, well, please show us under your statewide long-range transportation plan, VTrans 2045 or 2050 is now, what the future highway system of Virginia should look like. Not what it looks like today, what it should look like in the future. Do you have identified any new sections of interstate highways, such as the example coming out of Danville, going south? If you look at it, graphic mapping standpoint, you say, well, really, US 29 should be upgraded to interstate highway. Because it fills that nice gap between I-81 to the west and I-95 to the east. And there's a lot of traffic on 29.
What are the qualifications for a highway to be upgraded to an interstate?
It requires actions by a couple different bodies. It kind of begins with the Federal Highway Administration, USDOT. Generally then respond to a request from state DOTs to say, well, this route appears to meet all the criteria for being an element of the interstate highway system. And then there's another group that's basically all the state DOTs work together. That's called the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Authorities. So they kind of have to agree as well, but they never disagree.
well, I mean, Virginia didn't extend corridor H into Virginia.
That's true. That's a problem because the route as defined by the Congress began at Interstate 81, went all the way over to Interstate 79 in West Virginia. West Virginia has been building that section of highway. Virginia said, nope, we don't want to do it. That will divert traffic off of some of our other routes, like Interstate 64 further south.
Why do they want traffic on 64?
Because-
I mean, you could drive a short hop to Charlottesville, set your cruise control, take a finger. Drive. There's no traffic on that.
That's right, there is.
There is nothing, because there's 5 exits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But 64 in the other direction is awful.
Yeah, well, that's because of the Williamsburg and,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Richmond.
Right.
But that's the most boring highway.
No,
Okay.
Wilmington.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Is that
Too long.
class?
If
Yeah.
what I should aspire to when I enter into like my 50s, I can just like think about all the boring highways I've driven on.
Part of the challenge I identify was, again, the construction, especially in
Yeah.
Fredericksburg.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I spend a lot more time going to Richmond because my daughter's down there. and
Yeah.
You guys, I come back and I'm looking at Apple Maps. It turns red, right?
yeah.
And it's extending the express lanes down to 17. According to what I looked at the VDOT website, they're supposed to be done by the end of the year. The Jersey barriers are hopefully will disappear.
Mhm.
Jersey barriers freak people out. I
They
live
freak
in,
me out.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they freak people out. Everybody's in slow down.
Yeah.
So you take away the barriers and people, I'm not saying they're gonna go 55, but they're gonna go,
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah, and there is kind of a deficiency, I think, in Virginia, because they haven't looked at it from a broader corridor perspective, south of Washington, whereas Maryland has.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look between Washington and Baltimore, you've got Interstate 95,
Mhm.
4 lanes each way.
Mhm.
You have parallel to that, just to the west, US 29.
Right.
It's kind of an expressway, 3 lanes each way. You look just to the east of that, you've got the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, which is 2 lanes each way. Now, it's a bad road, the
Yeah.
Park Service can't even maintain it, but you add up all those lanes, you say, you're really looking at 3 + 4 + 2 lanes in each direction. You look south of Washington, you've got maybe 4 each way on 95, maybe 2 each way on US 1.
That's not the same level. And if you look at the roads between Washington and Baltimore, going east-west, intersecting these roads, 32, 75, 100,
Yep.
are all interstate quality or limited access highways going east-west carrying the traffic. You look at Virginia, and you look at Virginia, you got 66, and
64.
Route 50 hasn't been improved inside the Beltway since the 50s.
Yep.
And so,
Route 7.
although we have
They're working on that
an
one.
interstate and a metro system.
Yeah.
We just haven't kept up with the times.
Yeah.
Our infrastructure is, I think, almost the same as it was when I first moved here.
I think at some point I'd like to have a further conversation with you, who are an expert in this Federal Highway Act stuff, about public-private partnerships. The
Right.
Dulles Greenway, which is operated under a different act that is regulated by the SEC, and like what we need to do in Virginia to be able to coordinate regulation and authority and oversight over both of these entities, like Transurban and Dulles Greenway. Why do they operate under different systems, and how do we sort of streamline that?
Well, I think.
Next time, long conversation.
Was built private funds only.
Correct, and it still operates that way.
$15 a mile, whatever it is.
Well, they're trying to change it back. They're trying to come, actually, there's been legislation to.
Yeah, I've heard.
Out of, because currently the Dulles Greenway is the only road in Virginia that is, whose oversight is in the hands of the SEC. Everyone else is regulated under the private-public partnership or act.
Because there's no public in that Greenway.
Yeah.
They built it on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I actually have been I remember going to the location public hearing
Oh,
beyond Route 28.
Yep.
And there were 2 displays,
mhm.
one by VDOT
Oh.
to build it as a extension of the Dulles Toll
Mhm,
Road.
mhm,
The other by the private
mhm.
group to build it as a private thing. And the routes were very, very similar, except the private route had a few more significant curves in it.
Mhm.
And I remember a couple of us were looking at it, so why is that? I said, well, there was some large parcels of land we couldn't negotiate with.
Mhm.
We aren't the state that can come in and say eminent domain,
Sure.
we're coming right through your corner,
Yeah.
provide it, it's the land.
Mhm.
They couldn't do that,
Mhm.
but it's just, it's an
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you. It is nice to see you.
The other one in our neck of the woods here, if you've taken Route 50 west, we first moved here in 80.
Yeah.
It ended,
Senator Parker's district, you live in Senator Parker's district?
I do, he,
I mean, here's Sully Station, I can't remember.
Yeah, Senator Parker's district. You've got a primary June 20th, so you'll go and vote. for Senator Parker. Yes.
Oops, Karen.
Sure.
I just received.
Carrie Delaney,
Carrie.
maybe if you're done.
Yeah, Gary's right.
Yeah, she doesn't have a primary, but Senator Parker does, so
Okay.
we'll go and we'll support Senator
what I
Parker.
was saying is that if you go west on Route 50, out past, South Ryan area,
Oh, like Aldi and, yeah.
Route 50 was 4 lanes. There was nobody out there in the 1980s when we moved here. Route 50 now is the same 4-lane ends, but Loudoun County has 5 times the population. And that whole area where there used to be an airport, now is a hospital, right?
Yep.
And it still is 4 lanes to the same
Yeah.
point. And you go, well, if the population is 5 times greater, why hasn't Route 20 and Route 50 been 4 lanes at least to Gilbert's Corner?
Yeah.
Well, they put the circles in instead.
Right.
Carries his traffic.
And I hate to argue about transportation, if you've taken Route 15 through Maryland, there's a traffic circle just north of the Point of the Rocks Bridge.
Right.
It's a 2-lane, high-speed traffic circle.
Yep.
And you go across the ones on Route 50, and they're dinky.
They're 2-lane, but they're dinky.
Well, they're not only, but they're just dinky. It's their intention is to slow the traffic down, while the one in Maryland is to move Route 15 without a light.
Yep.
And in Route 50, and so the mind boggles at the difference in philosophy.
Yeah.
Well, is dinky the technical word, Jeff?
No, but basically what it is those roundabouts on Route 50.
Yeah.
I think those may have been the first ones ever built in Virginia.
Oh, interesting.
So I think they were very concerned about it. They've never done one anywhere else. Maryland have done a few.
Yeah.
And that one on US 15 is a very good kind of state-of-the-art roundabout design.
Right.
The ones on Route 50 in Virginia were kind of very early. Virginia process, they've gotten better. Because you start driving around, you keep seeing more and more of them places. They're bigger, they're better landscape, there's more room.
Sure.
You can go around at higher speeds. You know, they have those advantages, but it's a developmental process like any road.
All they had to do.
You gotta,
go
Yeah, I think
any
I'm gonna-
country in
yeah.
Europe
okay.
and look at one, and they can move 4 and 5 cars around the circle with no problem. We can't even move 1 lane of traffic around the circle.
All
It
right,
wasn't invented here.
so we thank you, Kat. You're gonna go back
Yes.
to eat.
Yes.
I am, yep.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
And is there anything else we want to ask Irene before we let
Yeah,
her?
Kat,
go?
get out of here. Yeah,
Great.
see you later.
Bye.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys. Nice to meet you.
Get up, Bess.
I will.
Bye, Kat.
What's so big?
Yeah. Yeah, any other burning questions while I'm here?
There was just, I mentioned our Homestead Act.
Can you tell me more about the Homestead Act?
Basically what it does, it caps the taxes that are paid by seniors.
Uh-huh.
In
Property taxes,
Property.
income tax, okay,
Yeah.
property taxes.
Pennsylvania has, well, property and income for the state and for the county.
California has a property income tax cap too.
Yeah, but it caps it out usually at age 62 or 65.
Yeah.
And what that does is encourage seniors to stay in their
Yeah,
home.
yeah, of course.
It allows them the affordability to stay in their homes once they reach the age of
Got it, okay.
standard income.
I thought it was,
Speaking to John Litzenberger, his point was that normally the drain on, or the states and counties' resources are far fewer for a senior person than they
Right.
would be if a family with 2 or 3 kids. Which
sure,
So they're saying is, it's cheaper, just let us be rather than forcing us to sell, ended up having to build us new schools.
yeah, I hear that. I thought it was gonna be a veteran thing, so, because we have done sort of time.
Because he and I are both veterans,
Yeah.
and John is also a veteran.
Yeah,
We bring it up as that.
I see.
But again, there are just a number of people, they have fixed incomes.
Sure.
They can't afford them.
I hear about that all the time from our community.
In Sully District, Fairfax County, we went up 25%.
I imagine you all have brought these concerns to Supervisor Smith.
We have attempted to.
Okay.
State
She's
will-
going to be here
Oh, great.
at our next month's meeting.
Oh, good.
If this is the report from Richmond, next month is the state of Sully.
Got it. Okay. The report from the Taj Mahal in Fairfax.
I can't figure out what an F and F is, so.
I find it hard to believe that the state Democrats and our Sully District Democrats are like cats and dogs, night and day, oranges and apples. They're not Democrats. I'm not a Democrat per se, but they certainly don't act like Democrats. They don't listen, they don't talk, they provide no accountability, they provide no transparency. They don't listen to the incumbent, to the residents. We write them letters, they say, oh, thank you for your letter. That's the last you hear from them. And listen over here,
They seemingly know better than we do. on every topic.
but it is,
Plus, they also seem to have, I think they have all the major development activity groups on their speed dials and vice versa.
Yeah.
Because those people always get in anytime they want.
what our concern land use is, this area here, for example, is the Westfields Business Association has lots that bankrupt and never would build. This is developed in the 1990s. And the suggestion was that residential housing might be a beneficial use of it. But if you stood out here anytime, you know that you're under the flight paths from Dulles.
Yeah.
And Dulles Airport in 1993 issued flight noise contents. They issued another one in 2019, which narrowed the flight paths, but in some cases elongated them. But the county still approved developments using the old plan. Because they had doubts of the new plan, but the point being is that
It wasn't just that.
some of the houses that were built were allowed under the old plan are now in the highest noise contour level that you can get and shouldn't be built. And had they been adopted, those houses could not have been built.
Yeah.
So the question then is, I won't state it, is whose shoulders were being rubbed?
And,
Yeah.
and even Federal Aviation Administration
Mm-hmm.
said, you, Fairfax County, really need to adopt these new noise control guidelines because FAA national regulations say certain things should not be built in relative close proximity
Sure.
to an airport runway.
Sure.
Residential is one of those things that should not be built there.
Yep.
There was an
Noise
article
pollution,
in-
safety issues, all of the things are,
in
that's,
Lewiston County, where residents who built their houses using this enlightened plan about making more housing available petitioned the FAA, can you change the flight path of the planes leaving and arriving at Dulles Airport because it's too noisy? And FAA said, we told you not to build there. And they
Well,
allowed county law.
it draws additional, so one, I believe that the other thing that they did was that they changed the ordinances they had drawn up based on the noise contour plans from 1993 to increase or to lower the decibel level in which the residential development is allowed to be built in order to say like, no, we can build here now. And the argument was that those estimations back in 93 were too conservative. And so there's some of the concerns that I've heard from MWA as well as airlines that operate out of Dulles. Dulles is a huge economic driver of our region, not just for the flights, but it's the people that they're bringing in, the people that they're flying out, the staff that work there. It's, 17,000 employees at Dulles Airport. And so some of the concerns that they brought was that airlines, we're making massive investments right now in an expansion at Concourse C for United, right? Because they're determining, and they've dubbed Dulles a hub, which is huge for us because we have these direct flights to lots of, right? It's all good economically. And one of their concerns was about if we get enough noise complaints from neighbors and from residents, it's going to really turn off airlines wanting to operate out of here. And so like, it's a concern that I share.
You get, many times you will get copies of our emails that say,
Yeah.
or our statements and our resolutions saying, don't do this. They continue to be done. Well,
Yeah, so, I think I mentioned to you, and I didn't end up introducing it this year, but I needed to get it in better shape. For next year, the plan is to have a study introduced to look at what the impacts of development in residential down zoning would be. It's not really up zoning, but it's like down zoning, in regions that have close proximity to airports because of the noise contours, flight paths, and the safety concerns that come with not just the noise pollution, but the fumes, and also like if something should go awry, who is directly in the path of said incident. Anyways, yeah, all considerations for us.
And there's probably some research related that's been done already by the Transportation Research Board.
Mhm.
So it's Transportation Research Board, the National Academy of Sciences. Headquartered in Washington, D.C.
Great. Yeah, so I hear those concerns from Sully loud and clear.
And data sheet.
it's a shame that.
Oh, tell me more, because I am currently opposed to data centers. Are you pro data centers?
No.
Oh,
Sorry, we gave Kevin here for.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
we are in a data. We're not Loudoun County, we're not Prince William, but we live right on the edge, Fairfax
Oh,
County.
sure.
I live right out there in Virginia, right at the edge of the bathroom.
Mhm.
And the zoning where they want to put those, right at the edge of the bathroom.
That's obsolete.
It is.
Well, the argument that they're making around these data centers is, the state gave all these tax credits and incentives to bring more data centers into Virginia. But the way that they structured these tax credits is pretty absurd, because they're saying you have to have at least one employee who makes X number of dollars. So when they talk about jobs, like, these data centers don't actually require that many people. So we're not actually creating very many high-paying jobs in our neighborhood and taking up a ton of land to create. And so I'm
And then they talk about there being tax benefits. No, there isn't tax benefits.
yeah.
It's a diminishing tax return.
But the thought of building 200 such data centers right at
100 acres.
right at the edge of the Manassas battlefield. And then you have the other issue where they're building them right next to residential, within 100 feet.
Fairfax County Board of Supervisors just passed that data centers are by right.
What?
Yes.
By right.
They referred a committee to study what restrictions might be further imposed, but that was after the by right decision.
And it's basically by right in certain zoning districts. If it's a highway commercial district, it's a by right activity. If it's most industrial districts, it's a by right activity.
Right.
One of the things we found, about a year ago, I guess, when Virginia Power had to come in for that rezoning. Yeah. There's a section,
Right up there on
north
28.
north of McLaren Road,
Mhm.
east side of Route 28.
Mhm.
There's some low-level mixed use offices in there. Those are going to be acquired and torn down, replaced by the 3 or 4 data centers. That was a by right action.
Mhm.
They never had to come to us to tell us what they were going to do.
Mhm.
But Virginia Power had to come because they need to put in a new substation.
Sure.
And we said, why do you need a new substation? Oh, because these new
Oh.
data centers coming in, we don't have the power unless we build a new substation.
Who pays for the new construction of the new substation?
Current duties.
All current and future uses of them.
Are substations owned by the utility provider?
Yeah,
So it's by Dominion?
yeah, because they don't only give power to.
Sure, then they reallocate the costs across the customers who are getting power out of it.
And it was mentioned that existing data centers are major payees.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're familiar with the Aerospace Museum Parkway, just to north of the new Sully Community Center.
Uh-huh.
Okay, there used to be the EDS grounds, and EDS was torn up, sold, and now it's going to be an Amazon data center. The EDS properties were along 28,
Mhm.
and along the back of the houses on the northern part of the Air and Space Museum Parkway. There are townhouses, then back to basically fields where EDS never built. Now, they are behind the new data center that's being built.
Hmm.
And so here you have this
Yeah.
row of townhouses and condos that back to the data center.
What, 100 yards?
Yeah, so the people that we saw last week at the Pleasant Valley, or Cub Run, whatever it was, who are across Stream Valley, have acres of land, hundreds of thousands of feet of land between them. Well, these people directly behind them.
So what about the one over here in Westgate, Jefferson?
The ones that were being built where the old buildings were torn down.
Yeah.
And that's the one that Jim Neighbors says is very close to the thing.
But within a couple hundred feet of.
But at least they have a stream valley between the data centers, now a forested stream valley between the townhouses.
Where's that? I didn't even hear about this.
Oh, it came to us, we approved it.
Oh, the stream valley.
Not the stream, well, I'm talking about the.
Oh, that was on Route 50.
What's his name?
No, that's a different one.
Near, the one we were last talking about was near the dealership.
Yes.
One on the south side of Benton.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about in Westfield, if you know where Accenture is, and that pond is south of the large IRS facility, right? Conference Drive, you make a left.
Oh, yeah. That's near, that's near Braddock Road and.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're building, they tore down those buildings, they're
Yeah.
building a data center there. But that is, pretty close to the people who live on the outside of the street. I had advocated
Oh, okay.
that they extend the road and break out to Braddock. That was forgotten, but it would make sense to allow people in, and then they didn't have to worry about the stupid Lee's Road extended or the only road in that intersection.
Maybe not. That's another issue.
We had a lot of issues in the summer.
Okay, well, I appreciate you coming up.
Oh, I'm very glad to be here. Very, very glad to be with you all again.
Do you have?
We met last year, most of us, I think.
Yes.
No, Jim.
You're fine. Okay, any other comments that you have here?
Taking you for.
Yeah.
All right, so we thank you for this.
Thank you.
And you're lucky you don't have a primary to go through.
I'm very lucky. Yeah. I feel like I got my fill of primary last time around.
Well, you did a good job. And I understand that your former opponent is now running for Senate in Loudoun.
That's correct. Yeah. Ibrahim Samira.
Oh,
Yeah.
so he's the guy that, down in Richmond that wanted to do something crazy.
In any case, he
We wanted to get rid of single family housing zoning entirely. So that's the one.
yeah.
I figured that would rile your feathers.
So let me go over some of the items that we need to worry about. Next month, as I mentioned, we're having Kathy Smith come back and report a state of Sully. We have two items on the land use as new. One is the decision brief on the parcel that we heard this week, last week. We also have them coming back for the, what is it, there's a plan, something or other, I'll be reading as there's something else they want us to do. And it's part of the, comprehensive plan. They were previously briefed it, they've come back with refinement, so they brief it again. And we'll talk about Park and Reimagine and other interesting items that are coming up. Those are what we have right now. And I want to thank the five of us for across the street last 2 weekends ago. That was interesting, and I thank Steve for the pictures. We'll have a little picture of that. And we had one of our best turnouts Monday a week ago. We had basically everybody from Carver and here. They were afraid of the data center. And I think they were less afraid with them left. And in fact, Evelyn Spade, our planning commission intended, which she left, she said, that came out better than I expected.
Oh, I hope she carries that message across the hall here to give her some indication, maybe people don't like that.
Well, she may have that perspective, or she may have the perspective, oh, they weren't all that upset once we explained things to them, so it'll be okay.
Well, data centers aren't too bad if they're 1,000 feet away. Or trees.
Let me, those electrons can travel just about anywhere at lightning speed.
That's right.
So whether a data center is, if we're looking at the DOD or Department of whatever, looking to get information from, if it's here, it's gonna travel the same speed as if it's out here.
That's right.
So if this is Virginia and this is, Arizona, who cares?
No. You don't know. The fact that AOL and UUNet were located in Tyson's Corner was a chief reason when they relocated to Loudoun that all the data centers are close to it, because their heavy duty internet wire was in Fairfax. Tyson's was moved out to the World Gate, World Communications, what was the company that was there before they went bankrupt? AOL was there. All those companies had
MCI.
internet cabling, and it makes a difference. If you have access to them and you're close to those heavy-duty internet cables, it in fact makes a difference.
Yeah. That's why it's called Data Alley.
Yeah, it's data alley because
They're looking for
they
that proximity.
relocated from,
But they can't create data alleys elsewhere?
It's because of there's a physical proximity to the cable like infrastructure here. that's underground. Like that's what I understand it as. They're looking for literal proximity to that.
And
There are other concentrations on it.
There are, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
But the fact that the AOL was here, UNet was here, the other company was on where AOL relocated. The other one that's interesting is now in Tyson's where AOL used to be. This is just a big U. They disconnected the connection to the office and put in like a jumper between the two. And it goes down the street and out the street, and never been in touch, but it was too expensive to actually short the wire, just cheap to put a jumper in.
Interesting.
If that wire goes to that street, wherever AOL used to be, if you dug down, you take careful. I don't know if you would hear the story about when they were doing wiring on an office, not even office, a shopping complex off of Route 29. And when somebody was digging with an excavator, black helicopters came and said, do not do any more digging. This is wise. Can't tell you that your cable's not in. You'll get shot if you get it close.
Oh, wow.
And not on any plan except their plan.
Oh, interesting.
You remember that briefing that we had?
Yeah.
So, it's the-
Yeah, lots of top secret stuff happening in our neighborhoods.
Okay.
So they do have data centers across the country, but we are one of the only states that have made such a sweet offer to them.
There are more data centers in this area than there are throughout the entire world combined.
Yeah.
We're very close to an international.
Data center alley.
Yeah, they call it across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Blows them all out.
Yeah.
Just think, that makes sure when you order from Amazon, if you take it fast.
Data centers are not warehouses. Well, thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna close this up.
Thanks again for all your work down in Richmond, volunteering to